Hey guys, what's up? This is Long D, and I'm going to sit down and tell you a story about how last week I was fortunate enough to be able to sit in on a Hindustani prayer ceremony, which is, if I remember correctly, it's called a Pooja. It's their prayer ceremony. And the Pooja is led by a priest of the Hindustani faith. It was called a Pundit. I'm not sure the Roman spelling. I would assume it was P-U-N-D-I-T. Not sure, but that's the name of the Hindustani priest. It's the title given to the Hindustani priest, you know, as far as translations go and things like that. Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be able to sit in on one, and I hope by telling my story I might open people's understanding of different religious faiths a little bit. And I don't know, if this video is successful in some respect, then I'll probably move on to other religions too, and describe my experiences with their ceremonies and with their people of faith. Whatever you might call them in whatever language, and go from there. For now, I'm going to tell this story. So last Thursday and Friday, a family that I knew, family of my girlfriend, they hosted two pujas back to back on different days. So the first day the puja lasted about 3 hours, second day the puja lasted about 2 hours or so, maybe a little bit less. I'm not positive because I was kind of there, but I wasn't completely there. I was more paying attention to the visuals and kind of the whole spirit of the thing, rather than the words, because obviously, or not obviously, to those of you who don't know me, I don't know how to speak Hindi. So, with that said, this is mostly going to be a story about the visuals and what I was, what I saw there. So, if you're interested in that sort of thing, keep watching. If you're not, goodbye. But, basically the way it happened is her parents invited the Pundit into their home, and the way the pujas work is they set up a table. At least they might work differently for other people, so excuse me if I'm making generalizations. I'm sorry, that's just what I saw. That's the first one that I saw. They set up a table on the floor that's about 5 inches off the ground, and it's large and rectangular in shape, and this is where they put a lot of different things. It's almost acts as a shrine, I want to say, and it has things like offerings, and it has little like idol statues of some of their gods, things like that. And specifically for each one was a little bit different, and I'm not sure I was able to pick out all of the nuances, but I'm going to try my best. Now, on the first day, one of them told me that that specific puja was for the blessing of 9 gods. And so what they did is at the front of the table, front of the rectangular table, they sat 9 large leaves, and I forgot to ask what the leaves were. They looked familiar. I'm not really sure what they were, though. 9 large leaves, and on each one they sat a small pile of rice and a small nut that I asked them what the name of it was, but no one knew how to tell me the name of it in English, and the name in Hindi I forgot. So if anyone knows, they can post that up, and I'd be very thankful. If not, then I'm sorry. But rice, small nut, and I think a small flower bud on the front too. So each leaf had those things sitting on them. Now behind the leaf, by I don't know, 5 inches or so, there were 3 more leaves, and on top of each of these leaves sat one of the small idol / god statues, whatever you might want to call them, and whatever is more appropriate in the Hindustani faith. Again, if someone wants to let me know, that'd be good too, because just giving a retelling of my experiences with this. Yeah, where the god statues sat. And the 3 that they sat there were Ganesh and Hanuman, I believe they said, which is, someone told me it was a monkey god. I'd never heard of that before. So that's the one I was most curious about, because Ganesh I'd heard of before, and I think the most recognizable Hindustani, god figure. Pretty sure, at least to my knowledge. And then there was Vishnu, and Vishnu is also has also been known as different things. So if you hear someone say Krishna, they explained to me that is Vishnu, and Vishnu has had many different incarnations over the years. So Krishna is its newest incarnation. So if someone says Krishna, they're just speaking of the newest incarnation of Vishnu. At least that's what I got from their story. And so Vishnu is just the name the universal name of this god or this figure. And those were the 3 that sat there, and the Vishnu one also had, I think they said, a wife with him. Can't remember if it was a wife or what it was necessarily. I know it was female, that the other was female, and they were kind of joined together. So it was two figures in one, and they were kind of bound together in the statue. Now, behind that, and also in the front, so to each corner of the small rectangular table, or excuse me, the large rectangular table, there were small like candle holder type things, and I don't want to say candle holders because they didn't have candles in them. They were kind of strange, and I'd never seen them before. There were little brass things that resembled candle holders, and instead of putting a candle in them, you take wick and you weave the wick through and wrap it around, and so when you light it, it, lights like a candle. Never seen that before. That might actually be a candle, I'm not sure. But one of those sat in each of the four corners, and they also poured ghee into them. Ghee, I think. It's Ghee, and they poured them into it, and I don't know if that was for some spiritual significance, or if it was just to help light the candles, light the things. I'm not really positive on that one. But that's what they did there. And then in different places all over the rest of the table were different plates or different bowls with different offerings in them. So they would have food on them. They had bananas and pear slices and grapes and things like that, and stuff that they had made specifically for this. It was what they called an offering. Now, after the ceremony, everyone who attends, they also eat offering, but before that, offering is put on the table. So it's the same sort of stuff that you'd eat. So it's not, it's not made out of wax or anything like that. It's actual food that they sit out, and place around, and they use that as an offering to their gods. Trying to think if I'm leaving anything out of this particular image. I'm racking my brain here. Those were sat, and that's basically the gist of what their shrine or prayer table looked like. And below everything there was a nice, like a red cloth, draped over the table. So it was pretty. It was interesting to see them set it up because I'd never seen most of this stuff before. Everything had very specific placement, and the whole ceremony is very specific. The ceremony was basically, at least how it's presented, was very very pundit centric. So the pundit came in, and after everyone had set up the table, the pundit directed and did the whole ceremony. Basically, his position was to the side of the table, and he would sit there cross-legged on his knees, and he would go through a ceremonial chant. And that's the only way they could think to tell me. They would say he's chanting, he's praying, but it's not. They said they weren't usually words that he was using. He was using, like chants sort of things. So, and that was really interesting to hear. He had a really voice with lots of projection behind it, a very deep voice, and it was really interesting to hear. A lot of different, it kind of evoked a lot of different, I don't know, emotions, I guess. It's different waves of emotions to hear, different kind of chanting that he did. It was all very interesting, and everyone had their head, slightly down, sort of, most of the time, I think. But really, the ceremony was mostly, at least it seemed like it was mostly between the pundit and the two people who had invited the priest into their house, into their home, or wherever it may have been held. So at the front of the table were my girlfriend's parents, mom and dad, and they sat there specifically, very nicely dressed, sat in front of the table, and the whole time were in a prayer position, on their knees, or in a cross-legged position, and the pundit seemed to be talking to them the whole time, or orchestrating the prayer through them specifically, or for them specifically, which was really interesting. So they were the main participants, and everyone else was just in attendance, basically, and being respectful, and there for the prayer. So I thought that was pretty interesting, because the only other ceremony I've really sat through is, a Catholic Mass on, different days. Can't really remember if they worked differently on different days. Would have been Sunday Mass, Saturday Mass, weekday Mass, and I've been to special Masses for Christmas and things like that. And I guess you could say they're priest-centric too, or pastor, I forget the name, I'm sorry, pastor-centric, but it all seems so different because there are just certain nuances that might be lost when I'm trying to tell you this. It's kind of a very different experience. Take it from someone who sat through both of these in particular. It's very different. So, if you're interested, it would be worth your time if you know someone of the Hindustani faith to go and, ask to sit through one, or ask to be, kind of ask if you could have, special invitation to one or something like that, because it's interesting. But yeah, it seemed to be specifically between those three, like the words exchanged. And my girlfriend and her sister would let me know at certain points kind of what was going on. And at one point, it actually switches from chanting and the prayer and thing like that to more of a storytelling session, which, you know, that I can relate to the Catholic sermons that I've been to, the Catholic masses that I've been to, because a lot of the time it is the priest or the pastor telling a story to the mass. You know, don't know what you'd call it. That's the word I'm going to use. And he would switch into telling stories, but the stories he would tell and speak specifically to the two who basically set up the prayer invitation. You know what I mean? So he would never really look at anyone else. He would kind of look around the room, but he would never address anyone specifically but the two who had invited him to the prayer ceremony. And a lot of things went on. A lot of interesting things were done, some of which I missed because I was sitting in the back and trying to be polite and just observe and catch what was going on. But at certain points, he would take a handful of rice, and he would not a big handful. He wouldn't like chuck it at them, but he would take like a little bit of rice up in the tips of his fingers like this, and kind of go like that and throw it, you know, kind of across them, not like into their eyes or anything, but, you know, across their face or across their body or down across the table. And at different points he would offer them things, and these things would be more flower buds or more petals, or, you know, like blades of a special grass or something like that. He'd hand it to them, or hand them a small pile of rice each, and they would place it down at certain times, and then, you know, go into a prayer, a specific, you know, prayer form, things like that, and say something. And it was really kind of a long, ornate process, and I'll admit some of the time I got bored, but that was mostly due to my lack of understanding of the language, because there's only so much, you know, there's only so much visual you can be interested in before you're like, I don't understand any of the words that are going on, you know. So plus, you know, lack of sleep kind of contributed to that too. But and then man, at other points we do that, and at other points they would light something. So I don't think all the candles were lit from the get-go. I think they waited, if remembering right. If I'm not, then again, someone, if you're watching, maybe back me up and stop me from being, you know, slapped across the face by people who have more understanding of this than I do. And yeah, that basically went on for a long time. And then at one point they did something. Now by the end of the ceremony, let me tell you that by the end of the ceremony, the whole table was covered with offerings of like blessings of flowers and food and things like that, and specific things they placed, and it was really kind of a sight to behold for someone, especially for someone who's never seen it before. You know, I'm sure to them it's very special too, but, you know, it's even more special, but it's more, let's say it's more visually intriguing to someone who's never seen that kind of thing before, like myself, or, you know, like others. At the very end, what they did is they had a small, I think it was made out of like aluminum or something like that, but just a small like dish, like a fire bowl sort of thing. And what they did is they lined it with aluminum foil, and in the center they start a fire. And it's a small fire, it's a smaller fire. It was basically, the flames never jumped more than about this high. And they put certain types of like wooden, it was mango sticks, mango Pooja sticks, mango prayer sticks that they would put in there as kindling, and then they put other things in there. They put rice in there, you know, as a offering, as a blessing. They would put other food in there. They would put different flowers and things like that in there, and they would just keep it going. And at certain points, the priest would, the pundit would take a bell that he had, a large bell, and he would ring it, and he would blow through this really big conch shell. It was about this big, and he'd rattle the bell, and God, the guy had amazing lung capacity. He'd lean back and blow through the conch shell, and it was pretty cool, pretty interesting. And they would keep the fire going at the end of this, and they kept adding things to it. And then that seemed to be about the end of the whole thing. And then after that, everyone took in the offering, so everyone ate some of the offering, and things were kind of wrapping up. But that is my, you know, experience there, and I just thought I'd take the time to tell everyone about it and see, yeah, just kind of see how that goes. So you guys take it easy, and I feel like my understanding of different things has been expanded a little bit, and hopefully might inspire other people to get out there and you know, experience some different things, and open their minds a little bit more if, you know, they feel like they're not open enough. Who knows? So you guys take it easy. It's Super Long D. Peace out. Holla back.